Mangwanani Malelepo Vukenjani Klekbas Vanave Africa. Welcome to Africa Good Morning. Today's show features a sweeping look at the continent's biggest developments. In Gabon, voters head to the polls in the first presidential election since the 2023 coup that ended the Bongo dynasty's decades-long rule, with transitional leader Brice Oligui Nguema seen by many as a national liberator emerging as the front runner. Meanwhile, diplomatic tensions are rising in the Sahel as Algeria and Mali cut off airspace access to each other following the downing of a drone near their border. The UN is calling for a major rethinking of peacekeeping strategies as modern conflict zones become more unstable and technologically complex. In Botswana, De Beers has firmly denied allegations of political funding in the wake of UDC's historic victory, while in South Africa, new U.S. tariffs threaten tens of thousands of citrus industry jobs. Plus, we check in with Rorisang Mohojwe for the Botswana Report. Watch the show on DSTV 285, GoTV 25, OneUp2.com, and Network Media Hub on YouTube. Top stories shortly.
Welcome to Namibia, where adventure meets tranquility. With Enjoy, you have access to a wide range of accommodations to suit every traveler's taste and budget. Experience the finest dining and hospitality Namibia has to offer. Booking your dream accommodation is just a few clicks away with Enjoy. Join thousands of happy travelers who have trusted Enjoy for their Namibian getaway. Your gateway to unforgettable Namibian adventures. Visit us today at enjoy.my.na.
Gabon is set to hold its first presidential election since the 2023 coup that ousted the Bongo dynasty's 56-year rule, with polling opening at 0700 GMT on Saturday in a vote that the military hopes will solidify its grip on power. Led by Brice Oligui Nguema, the military seized control minutes after Ali Bongo's contested re-election, marking the last in a wave of coups across West and Central Africa that disrupted years of democratic progress. Nguema, now head of the transitional government, has declared his candidacy and is widely expected to win, bolstered by his popularity and institutional control, though his main challenger, former Prime Minister Alain Claude Billy Bainze, has mounted a campaign under a new movement, Together for Gabon, to separate himself from the previous regime. Nguema's image as the liberator from Bongo's unpopular rule resonates with many in the oil-rich yet impoverished nation of 2.5 million, though questions remain over his promises to diversify the economy beyond declining oil revenues and boost agriculture industry and tourism. The World Bank notes a modest economic uptick from 2.4% in 2023 to 2.9% last year, driven by infrastructure and commodity production. But civil society voices like Pepesi Oguleguende stress the need for real progress in governance, education, health, and infrastructure. As the country awaits results expected Saturday night, the outcome could determine whether Gabon truly begins to rise from the ashes, as Nguema claims, or remains trapped in a cycle of elite dominance and broken promises. Diplomatic tensions between Algeria and Mali have escalated dramatically following the downing of a drone near their shared border, prompting both countries to shut their airspace to each other's flights in a tit-for-tat exchange rooted in deepening mistrust. The row began when Algeria shot down what it described as an armed reconnaissance drone that allegedly entered its airspace near the town of Tinzaltina, a flashpoint area where Malian forces are battling Tuareg separatists. Mali's government vehemently denied the airspace violation, stating the drone wreckage was found 9.5 kilometers inside its territory and condemned the act as a hostile premeditated action. In a blistering response, Mali accused Algeria of supporting terrorism, charges Algeria dismissed as unserious and an attempt to deflect from Mali's own security failings. The fallout has seen Mali recall recall its ambassador from Algiers, summon the Algerian envoy in Bamako, and withdraw from a regional security grouping that includes Algeria, further straining ties that have deteriorated since Mali's 2020 coup. As global conflict zones grow more complex and unpredictable, the United Nations says its peacekeeping efforts must adapt at an unprecedented pace. Speaking to the Security Council, Jean-Pierre Lacron, the UN Under-Secretary General for Peace Operations, emphasized that the nature of modern peacekeeping has evolved, with ceasefires becoming more fragile and the lines between threats increasingly blurred. Ceasefire monitoring is no longer just about being present. It's about quickly understanding and responding to real-time developments on the ground, Lacroix stated. He pointed to the growing use of advanced technology that allows UN peacekeepers, often called blue helmets, to oversee vast terrains without necessarily being physically embedded. Yet, despite these tools, Lacroix stressed the genuine and lasting peace hinges on political will and the full backing of UN member states, especially the Security Council. He also flagged a rising threat, the spread of misinformation and disinformation, which has damaged the credibility of UN operations and sown distrust among local populations. Still, he maintained the peacekeepers alone cannot secure ceasefire. Success ultimately depends on the commitment of the warring parties themselves. In a world where hybrid threats, political volatility, and digital manipulation increasingly define the battlefield, the UN's peacekeeping blueprint is being reshaped to stay relevant and responsive. Have a look.
Today's operating environment is increasingly dynamic and often characterized by hybrid threats that blur the boundaries among domains. In this context, ceasefire monitoring can no longer be just about being present. It's about rapidly understanding and acting on what is happening on the ground. The support of member states, the support of host government and host parties, and more importantly, the support of this council to our peacekeeping operation will continue to be absolutely essential if we are to succeed in the implementation of our mandate.
De Beers has denied accusations by former Botswana President Mokgweetsi Masisi that it funded the Umbrella for Democratic Change during Botswana's 2024 general elections, stating it does not support any political party or provide political funding under any circumstances. In a written response, the Diamond Giant cited its publicly available code of conduct, emphasizing that it does not offer financial or other support to political parties, candidates, or affiliated organizations, either directly or indirectly. The allegations come after the UDC won a landslide victory last October, unseating Masisi's Botswana Democratic Party, which had ruled since independence in 1966 and secured only 4 parliamentary seats in the historic vote. Here's the moment Masisi made the claims.
My government refused to yield to De Beers' pressure, and my guess is as good as yours in the calculation of the refusal to sign and the timing of it, and what we saw as the apparent outspending or by the UDC of ourselves by a factor of more than 1 to 15, 1 to 20, it's not hard to imagine where the financing may have come from. And I say this with a deep sense of seriousness, because I want to dare De Beers to go and deny that they have been interfering in Botswana politics, including the use of finance. They started within my own party when they financed the so-called Schlemmer report. That Schlemmer report was window-dressed, sugar-coated to be as if it were a BTP project. It was not. It was fundamentally a De Beers project, and the greatest beneficiary who then ascended to the leadership of the BDP. That was their project. So they can't deny it. They can't deny the fact that they secretly then had financed the retirement of a former president, which then became public, unfortunately. And I bet you it's only a matter of time before it becomes public how they managed to finance the change of government because of an injury they felt at the negotiating table when we beat them hands down. I challenge that. And I challenge the UDC government to come out clean and tell us what price did they pay by watering down a brilliant agreement that we had with De Beers. Two, we must also get to calculate the real cost, the true cost, the opportunity cost of the sacrifice that was made to the expense of Botswana, at the expense of Botswana, in terms of potential lost revenue. But we warned you about this. There is no genuine intentions on the part of those who are harping criticism at us when they don't know what's in the frying pan to do with negotiations. They don't know why we had never challenged this agreement in the past. And I did say, and I meant it genuinely, I was prepared, if it took that, to lose elections.
We'll be delving deeper into that story shortly after the weather as Rorisang Mohojwe joins us with the Botswana report. So we are going to be starting with some economic news related story because obviously Masisi is talking big money with his accusations against De Beers. But first, Rorisang Mohojwe, good morning, madam.
Good morning, Sir Ashwin, and a very good morning to all our wonderful viewers. It's always a pleasure to be right here on Africa Good Morning.
All right, so we have an interesting update that we certainly need from you with the story that we just highlighted. BDP President Mokgweetsi Masisi has accused De Beers of interfering in Botswana's political landscape, alleging the diamond company attempted to politicize a long-running tax dispute with the government.
Former President of Botswana, who is also the leader of the former ruling Botswana Democratic Party, Mokgweetsi Masisi, has indeed accused De Beers of meddling in the politics of the country. He was speaking during a press briefing that was called by the BDP. During this press briefing, Masisi made damning allegations. He accused De Beers of secretly funding the UDC, which is currently in power, and he says that is what led to the defeat of the BDP after nearly 6 decades in power. He also accused De Beers of sponsoring the former president Ian Khama's retirement. Now, one of the claims that he made was that delays in finalizing the sales agreement between the government of Botswana and De Beers was due to taxes that are allegedly owed by De Beers, and we understand that these taxes amount to about 4 billion pula. Now, we do know that during his time in office, Masisi was very vocal. He was a vocal advocate of the government of Botswana having a larger share of the pie in the agreement, the diamond sales agreement, right? But he was also accused of being very aggressive. He had a very aggressive stance or approach towards the agreement, and this drew criticism from the opposition at the time. They were saying that he just needed a more, calm and structured approach, when he's dealing with such a sensitive contract. So that factor, coupled that he did not present any evidence to back up his accusations. Now, these two factors, they cast doubt on what Masisi was saying. We don't know whether it is true or not because he failed to present that evidence in the very platform that he was accusing De Beers of. And he did challenge De Beers to come out and deny it, which they did. They did put out a statement to say that those accusations are false and baseless because they, as a company, do not sponsor any form of politics whatsoever. Meanwhile, the Umbrella for Democratic Change has not yet commented on this matter. Another thing is that we expect the BDP, there's a conference, an elective congress, the BDP is going to an elective congress in May. Now, during this congress, Masisi is expected to step down and a new executive committee, new leadership will be coming into power, and many are promising to rebuild the party. So that is currently where the BDP is right now. They are just looking at, the current leader Masisi to step down. And many critics, many analysts are saying that, these accusations that are being made by Masisi are just an indicator of a leader that is failing to come to terms or failing to accept defeat, failing to accept the fact that he has indeed lost power and that his time as a leader in politics is done, it is over. So they are all urging Masisi to step down and just retire and go live a peaceful life somewhere at the farm, as some put it.
We'll certainly be keeping an eye on that one, Rorisang. Now, after years of delays, the government will finally begin construction of the long-proposed state theatre with 12 million pula allocated in the 2025-2026 development budget. Tell us about this.
A bit of good news there for the creative and entertainment sector in the country. The Minister of Sports and Arts, Jacob Gilibeng, has announced that after many years of delay, government is finally set to begin the construction of the State Theatre. Now, the State Theatre is envisioned as a national facility for cultural expression. It is intended to serve as a hub for cultural and creative arts, where there will be space for performances as well as exhibitions and workshops that will be promoting the development of the creative arts sector in Botswana. Now, the minister was presenting his budget proposals in Parliament and did say that the construction of the State Theatre will gobble up about 12 million pula of the budget. This project has been on government's plans for many years, but it kept being deferred. Even with the previous administration, they did mention that it is in the plans. However, it kept being deferred. And this has really sparked a lot of frustration as well as criticism from the creative industry players. They did accuse government of failing to commit to the creative sector despite all the promises that have been made. Now, this theatre is among the infrastructure projects that the minister says will account for over 65% of the ministry's 102.9 million pula development budget. That 65% is going to go towards infrastructure buildings or infrastructure of the State Theatre. So it is good news because now it means that the creative and the arts sector will have a space that they can call their own, for cultural expressions. They'll be able to hold workshops, they'll be able to hold exhibitions, and they'll be able to hold performances, as we know that Botswana is quite strong in terms of theatrical performances that have to do with culture. The minister also, talked about plans to establish cultural villages or cultural centers within specific villages. And this is aimed at really increasing access to exhibition spaces as well as working areas across the country. And you know, the creative sector has really applauded this move, and they have welcomed this move as a welcome development for a sector that has been struggling to get some sort of, you know, assistance and support from the government as well as the private sector. But now they're saying this will be a very welcome move.
Exciting news indeed. Thank you very much, Rorisang, for bringing us the news stories from Botswana.
Always a pleasure to be right here on Africa Good Morning. Do have yourself a wonderful day. Until next time, good morning.
All right, it's time for us to get into economic news. U.S. President Donald Trump's recent imposition of a 31% tariff on imports from South Africa, part of a broader 10% baseline tariff on all imports, has sparked concern among South African citrus farmers who warn the move could threaten up to 35,000 jobs. The Citrus Growers Association of Southern Africa said the additional $4.50 cost per citrus carton would severely undermine their competitiveness in the U.S. market, which accounts for over $100 million in annual citrus exports, or roughly 5 to 6% of total shipments. With packing for the U.S. market already underway, growers are urging the South African government to urgently negotiate tariff exemptions or reductions to prevent devastating economic consequences. Let's have a look at the economic indicators. Let's get into the sport news, shall we? Declan Rice was the undisputed star of the night as Arsenal dismantled Real Madrid 3-0 at the Emirates in the first leg of their Champions League quarter-final on April 8 last night, scoring 2 brilliant goals and bossing the midfield with authority, composure and relentless energy as the Gunners stunned the Spanish giants with a performance full of pace, precision and power. Rice opened the scoring with a thunderous strike from outside the box, added a second with a perfectly timed run and finish, and set the tone for a night that saw Arsenal not only take a massive step towards the semi-finals, but also confirmed the English Premier League's 5th spot in the 2025-2026 Champions League, with Mikel Merino adding a 3rd and the entire team feeding off Rice's commanding presence. So that has been Arsenal news, which of course makes me happy, and as far as I'm concerned, that's a good way to end the show. Thank you very much for joining us for Africa Good Morning, as we brought you the Botswana Report amongst other stories. DSTV 285, GoTV 25, OneUp2.com, and Network Media Hub is precisely where you can find us. From me, Ashwin Berry, and the Africa Good Morning team, I think I'm going to have a good day. Cheers.